This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome back to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your co-host, Greg Thompson, who is flying solo once again with this offseason series on free agency heading into the March spending period here. So during that time period, you've seen us go over a couple different things. How much cap space do the Bills really have when considering some of the CBA rules? What do I anticipate happening with their current free agents and who should be re-signed and for how much? We just went over our Bills free agent wish list on offense, and now we turn our eye to the defensive side of the ball. I actually think that although we will see some major investments in the offense, that there's just as many needs on the defensive side of the ball, and a few of them might be expensive. We're going to go position group by position group to be able to see where we see some of these things happening. And I'm going to start out at defensive tackle. Obviously, we lucked out last year having Ed Oliver fall to us at the 9th pick. I think that's something that's going to pay dividends for years to come. We just saw the restructuring of the Star Lotulelei deal. Really, it was Star trading in some lower cap numbers and lower salary to have a better chance at seeing the second, third year of that deal. I think he saw the writing on the wall and realized that there was only going to be this year and then they were going to release him. So he reduced that number this year down to his dead cap number and reduced next year by almost $3 million and the following year by about that much as well. We have some pending free agents with Jordan Phillips and Corey Lugitt. I think Lugitt might come back on a minimum deal or a low value deal. I think Jordan Phillips is probably going to get paid somewhere else in the market. And that leaves an opening at that backup 3 tech. A few names to be able to take a look at. Obviously, we're bringing over Eric Washington as the new defensive line coach, former defensive coordinator for Carolina. He has one of the last remaining draft picks that were taken while under Brandon Beane and while Sean McDermott was there, is defensive tackle Vernon Butler. At 6'4", 330, I see some potential similarities to Jordan Phillips. Never quite lived up to that first-round pick status coming out of Louisiana Tech, but I think he could have the right value if Coach Washington thinks he can kind of bring him over. That's maybe somewhere in the 2-year, $7 million range that you could bring him in as a value. I also like Malik Collins, 25-year-old coming out of Dallas. He's 6'2", 308, not quite as big as Butler or Phillips, but a little more consistently disruptive. He's had a good couple years here, and I think an undervalued guy. Obviously, there are some bigger names out there: Chris Jones, Gerald McCoy, and Ndamukong Suh. I don't anticipate any of those happening here. I think they're looking forward to Harrison Phillips coming back. They obviously restructured Starr's deal for a reason because they're expecting him to remain here at least this year and next year. Big plans for Ed Oliver. I think they're looking at a backup range guy when Starr's deal fully comes off the books, maybe going into the 2022 season. Maybe we see another investment there. That's also when they'd be looking to find out, do we need to re-sign Harrison Phillips? So I don't see a huge expenditure. But as Eric Turner has pointed out, I do think the defensive tackle is a sneakier need than maybe what some fans are looking at. I'm just not sure how big of an investment it'll be and whether it'll be free agency or the draft. Defensive end is where the real fun starts. I think pass rush is the number one need on this entire team. I love throwing around Pagula Bucks, and I think this is a great place to do it. Right now, obviously, we have Jerry Hughes, Trent Murphy, Daryl Johnson, and Mike Love all under contract. Trent Murphy is a deal that we could move on from. Shaq Lawson's pending free agency also comes into play here. Anyone who follows the show or follows me on Twitter knows that I have an unhealthy love for Jacksonville's Yannick Ngakoue. I think he's the exact kind of player that you want to invest in long term. Current reports are that Jacksonville plans to either franchise tag him if they're not able to reach a long-term deal. So for our purposes right now, I'm going to assume that he's not available and not get into any of the speculation of potential a trade like we saw with Frank Clark, D Ford, Jadeveon Clowney. I'm anticipating those are not options right now. Once you get into that next level, there's a handful of names that we could see. I mentioned Jadeveon Clowney. I think he's going to get in excess of $100 million. Shaquille Barrett out of Tampa Bay led the NFL with 19.5 sacks. Bud Dupree had a really nice season out of Pittsburgh. Eric Armstead out of San Francisco had a nice resurgence after a disappointing first few years. I think all of them are in the market. potential options. I actually think all of them would be upgrades over Shaq Lawson. But the one name that I'm really excited about, assuming again that Ngakoue is not available, is Baltimore's Matt Judon. He's a former 5th-round pick out of Grand Valley State. 6'3", 278. He's 27 years old, and I think he follows a really similar path to another free agent that left Baltimore last year, Zadarius Smith. You saw him go to Green Bay and just wreak havoc and really make a powerful impact on an already pretty good defense. And I think that's exactly what Judon would do if he came to Buffalo. He's never missed a game due to an injury. Outstanding locker room presence and former Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, is really good at supporting the run. 3 straight years with 7+ sacks and double-digit quarterback hits. He increases pressures each year. I think it's potential that he has the best football ahead of him with how good the rest of Buffalo's defense is. He may not get quite as much as the $20 million a year that Clowney gets, but I do think that he could get somewhere in that 4-year, $66 million deal range that Zadarius Smith got from Green Bay last year. I think that's right about the right areas, 16.5, $17 million a year. And I think that's what could bring him into town. And it's something that I'd be open to. If we go with someone of that degree, of a Judon, an Ngakoue, Barrett, Jadeveon Clowney, I actually think it's possible that we could then move on from Trent Murphy and potentially look at another value signing. Another one, I'd mentioned Vernon Butler earlier, another guy that new D-line coach Eric Washington has some connections with is a former Grambling alum of his, Mario Addison. Although Addison is 32, he's had 4 straight seasons of 9+ sacks. I think that he might be a guy you could get on a nice 1 or 2 year deal, $6 or $7 million, and is showing more consistent pass rush ability than what we've seen from Trent Murphy the last couple of years. Another couple names in that area, maybe an Emmanuel Ogba, who is kind of a bust coming out of Cleveland. You might be able to get him on a restructure or a rebuilt deal. Vinny Curry is a guy who's bounced around between Tampa and Philadelphia. Vic Beasley is another guy that I think at the right deal could make sense as a rotational pass rush and a potential alternative to Trent Murphy or Shaq Lawson. So I think it's possible they bring back Shaq at the right number. And if you paired him with a good pass rushing specialist opposite him, you could take advantage of his good run game fits. But I'd love to see them move on from Trent Murphy and even let Shaq walk. If we had a chance to end up with a defensive end room of Matt Judon, Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, maybe spend a day 2 pick on Bradley Anai out of Utah, still have Darrell Johnson floating around. That's the kind of defensive end and pass rush that I think can strike fear into the hearts of the quarterbacks on the Bills' schedule. Another position that comes up here is linebacker. Obviously, with Lorenzo Alexander's retirement, we're left pretty bare. And right now it's 5th-round pick Voshon Joseph, who spent the entire season on IR after an honestly pretty disappointing preseason. We also have Corey Thompson, who was one of the primary backups and never really stood forward or stole any snaps from Zoe. I think that it's going to be tough to find a guy who did everything Zoe did with strong side linebacker, pass rushing, D tackle, and DN, special teams captain all at once. But there's a few things that we look for to check some of those boxes. One of the rare guys that actually could replace almost all of that is Kyle Van Noy. He was a 2nd-round pick by the Lions and then got traded to the Patriots and has really flourished in that Patriots defense. He's 6'3", 250. He can play strong side linebacker on 1st and 2nd down and then move down into a pass rusher on 3rd down. I think he could cost us maybe 3 years, $30 million. So he might be a guy that if we re-sign Shaq and didn't splurge at defensive end, maybe we do a bit more of a splurge at linebacker to bring him in. And I think he's a guy that we could get full snaps out of by playing on 1st and 2nd down and then also moving into a pass rush role. So he is going to be 29, so a little bit older, but I think with his versatility and championship pedigree, it may be worth the investment there. A couple guys who are maybe a little more under the radar are Tennessee's Kamala Correa. He's 6'3", 241, 26 years old, pretty scheme versatile, plays a lot of special teams. Another guy is Kyler Fackrell coming out of Green Bay. He's a big dude, 6'5", 245. He could play all over, has experience at outside linebacker, special teams. He even had a 10.5 sack season a year ago. I think another value option is Camus Grugier-Hill coming out of Philadelphia. He's 26. He's 6'2", 230, and more of the coverage linebacker, special teams guy, not as much of a pass rushing option. But those are all three guys coming off of their rookie deals, going to be a little bit cheaper options, a guy who can play some of those first and second down roles. Some of them have special teams ability, some of them some coverage ability, maybe a little bit of pass rush here, but some more value options with Correa, Fackrell, and Grugier-Hill. Another position to look at is cornerback, and it's a sneaky one because Levi Wallace is an exclusive rights free agent, meaning we're going to bring him back. We have a little bit of an injury history with Taron Johnson, and we have Kevin Johnson as a free agent. So I think corner's a little bit of a sneakier need than what maybe some fans realize. Although I do think it's more likely we see the investment to come in the draft, I think it's worth looking at the options in case we're not able to retain Kevin Johnson. I don't see them bringing in another free agent and re-signing Kevin Johnson, but I could see one or the other. Obviously, there's some high-end guys, Byron Jones, Chris Harris, even Logan Ryan. I don't see us going that end of the market with the contract we're about to have to give Trey White. I think they're going to be looking more at some guys that maybe a team with some cap problems can't afford and is coming up as a free agent because of that cap crunch, and there's no better place in the next two positions to look at that with than Minnesota. So Mackenzie Alexander is a guy who was coming out of Clemson. He's 5'10", 195. He's 26, has a lot of talent. They had a ton of different guys competing for snaps with Trey Wayne, Xavier Rhodes, Mike Hughes, and a ton of guys they had invested either first-round picks or a lot of money into. So he bounced around between outside and nickel corner. I think they might be able to get him for maybe a notch more than Kevin Johnson, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 million compared to 5 to 6 million for Johnson. But he might be worth it and somebody worth taking a stab at. Daryl Worley is another guy coming out of Oakland, now moving to Las Vegas. He's a bigger guy, 6'1", 215. And only 25 coming off his rookie deal, but another guy that might have some flexibility to move around into different spots. And if you were to bring in one of those guys or Kevin Johnson back to compete with Levi Wallace, then maybe take a draft pick to compete with Taron Johnson in the nickel, I think we can really round out that cornerback group. The final group here is the safety position. And obviously going into this year, we have Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Saran Neal, and Jaquan Johnson all under contract. We have Dean Marlowe and Kurt Coleman ready to be brought back if we offer a spot. But if you look a little deeper, Poyer only has 1 year left. Micah Hyde only has 2 years left. Saran Neal has shown some versatility and Jaquan Johnson a few flashes, but I don't know that either screams future starter to me at this stage. So I fully expect this to be a position where the Bills invest in the draft, possibly this year and in 2021, but a possibly higher upside flyer could make some sense. So oddly, another spot that's another Clemson Tiger and another one from the Vikings secondary is Jaron Kearse. Obviously, he comes from the Kearse family, and obviously his uncle was the freak coming out there as a crazy defensive end for Tennessee so many years ago. And he's a bit of a freak of his own, 6'4", 215, really fast, 26 years old. He was stuck behind Harrison Smith and Anthony Harris in Minnesota, who they were both paying a lot of money. Anthony Harris is actually a free agent this year as well and probably going to get paid a lot of money. I think you might be able to sneak him for maybe 2 years, $6 to $8 million, close to the way that we stole Jordan Poyer. And that, I think bringing him in, one, he can be a key special teams contributor day one. He can push Saran Neal and Jaquan Johnson. And if you happen to catch lightning in the bottle, maybe you snag another reasonably priced safety to replace Jordan Poyer if we're not able to re-sign him. So I think that each of those spots give us some ideas of the kind of people that they may go after. I think we will see some splurge signings and some ability to be able to, maybe spend a little bit more than what people are expecting. I think that we have some great building blocks with Tremaine Edmonds, Ed Oliver, Trey White, players like that to be able to build on going forward. But I think it's important to continue to supplement that and not take that defensive success for granted. I think it's important to be able to continue to add to that and make that strength into an even more dominant strength as the offense builds itself up as well. Thank you for listening to this off-season series. It's been a lot of fun to be able to write up these articles and be able to do these companion pods with them. Please give us a like, a rating, a review. Tell a friend about what we have going on. Check us out at cover1.net. We're going to have awesome stuff coming out all through free agency, all the way through the draft, all through the offseason, doing our positional reviews. I think you're really going to enjoy the content that we have coming forward here. Check out our premium memberships. The Slack invites are awesome. All the video sessions that we're doing, everything that we have going on here is totally worth it. Right now it's $10 for the whole year. Very reasonable to be able to bring that back, and I think it's totally worth your while. Appreciate all your time here today. You have been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. We are out.